Mark II, the FS5, and of course all the A7 models that where the E-mount system was sort of born. When you're buying into an E-mount camera, you're buying into a complete camera system, and it allows us to interchange between several cameras that use the same lenses among several cameras. Our primary cameras are very often the FS7 to do interviews. The type of work that we go into, before I go going into specifics, we'll find ourselves doing documentary work, doing interviews on the red carpet, often doing interviews for like the New York Public Library. We do a lot of documentary work. So the type of lenses we use truly varies with each project. When we're doing very fast work and let's say we're working on a red carpet, we'll turn to the zoom lens, the 18 to 110 zoom lens. It's a parfocal lens that allows us to just work very quickly, very wide, and very small, and just fast. Everything once you push in, focus, and out, and you're ready to go. When you're working with this system, the great thing is that the lenses are communicating with the camera, and all the information, all the metadata from the lenses is coming right into the camera, and it's going to be available to you when you're viewing it, like in Catalyst View, is it? Catalyst View? Catalyst Pro. And that can come in very handy later. When we're doing simple setups, such as an interview for a documentary or an interview for a nonprofit, very common thing for us, we're usually using prime lenses for that. So we'll be using like a 50 as our main. All our shooting is done in 4K. So none of our product is exported in 4K yet, except when we're doing imagery like this, which I'll get into in a little bit. But it gives us a tremendous amount of latitude because any lens we use becomes more than one lens. If I'm using a 50 millimeter lens as my main interview lens, and I'm getting a medium shot from here to here, I know I can push in with that lens when I'm doing my post-production all the way into an extreme close-up if I need to, and get good contact. So I need to know that that lens is really going to be sharp all the way through. Because if it looks great when it's here and then I push in and it just looks like mud, no good, not important. So we often use the FS7 as our primary camera, and sometimes FS5 as a secondary camera. And it's good to know, once again, when we change it, if we're running from this camera to that camera, or we're throwing an A7 onto a Ronin or onto a glide cam stabilizer, that we'll be able to do a color match that will work all the way across. So now let's talk about lenses. Lenses are a hugely personal decision. It's not just how sharp your lens is. I mean, that's one of the qualifiers that you hear people talk about. It's like, Sony lenses are fabulous, and they are Zeiss lenses. They are incredibly sharp, but that's not always what I want in a shoot. If I'm going to, recently, a few months back, we got to shoot Bette Midler, and for her opening of Hello Dolly. Now, Bette Midler does not want me to prove how sharp my lenses are on her face. It's just a fact. So as well and accurate and great contrast as these lenses are, I needed to tone them down. I needed to use a different lens, or a lens that was softer, kinder, a little bit more round. In this case, I used some old Cooke lenses from the 60s that I had modified to work with PL mount. The great thing about the E system is you can modify to almost any lens. Pretty much any lens that's out there will fit with an adapter on the E-mount system. So whatever. I mean, I've used old Pentax lenses. I've used Tamron mirror lenses from the 70s. I love collecting lenses and using them for different purposes. The Sony lenses are an interesting brew because they're extremely sharp. They have incredible contrast, very low chromatic aberration, which really appears when you're shooting a skyline or something with really high contrast lighting. If you got a bright sky and a bunch of straight line buildings with a less expensive lens or a less qualified lens, you're going to find blue and orange fringing on the edges of your image, and that could drive you nuts. And it's very hard to get rid of. You can do it. You can pull the color out of those areas in Resolve. I've done it. I've had to. But you don't want to have to do that, especially if it's something on more intricate that you just can't pull the color away from. So as I was saying, on carpet stuff, we might use a wide, the zoom wide angle. When you're doing documentary, I'm using a 50 as a main lens, and then as a secondary B camera, I'll probably use an 85. And again, keeping it slightly wide, so in post, I have time and space to correct. It's a wonderful thing. I can't tell you how many zooms I've done in the past where you're going in to zoom in for that dramatic moment and you push in and you're just a little late for them to do it, or you're still moving, or you haven't made it there on time. With 4K pushing and zooming, you have tremendous control. In our more aggressive shooting, like needing to create B-roll that comes along with each of our shoots, we tend to use the new G Master lenses. I just recently this year obtained a set of the G Master lenses, 16 to 35, 24 to 70, and a 70 to 200. They're very clean, very light, very fast, edge-to-edge sharpness. I don't know what they did with their design, but there is none of the normal chromatic aberration that I found in most lenses, the fringing I'm talking about. And they're flat to the edges, where there's no ghosting, there's no fringing, as I was saying, and there's no vignetting and cutoff as you get to the wide end of the lenses. This is very helpful. I mean, the stuff that you're seeing behind me is another facet of the work we do. Along with the traditional video work and all the stuff that all of you do, I do a tremendous amount of stock footage of New York City. In fact, I'm one of Getty Images' larger suppliers of New York City stock footage. And stock footage is one of those things that can make money for everybody, but people just ignore it. They say, oh, yeah, I ought to get my stuff into the stock agencies. But people who aren't and have footage or working independently or have the availability to do that are throwing away money when they're not submitting and trying to get into that market. I mean, we started it. My wife and I were on vacation in Ireland, and we're doing all the things you do when you're on vacation. You're taking pictures of rocks and waves and bushes and trees and flowers. And we said, if we were from here and we came to New York, we'd be doing the same thing. But we're from New York, so we don't even look up at the top of the buildings. We don't pick up a camera at all. So we started doing it. And it's become a hugely profitable part of our business. Using the Sony G Master lenses for this has become a great part of that system. And it's allowed me, by using just 3 lenses, I cover a huge range. I use a 16 to 35, a 24 to 70, and a 100 to 400 G Master lens. And that's a huge range. The big shots that you see behind me that have sun and compressed buildings and details, these are shot from about 1.5 miles across the Hudson River from New Jersey. And you want that incredible detail. Unlike shooting somebody's face where you want to be a little kinder and you might need to soften the image, here I want every detail because my imagery is going to be picked up and used in other people's documentaries, in feature films, and in commercials. And I need to have the quality as great and the exposure to be as neutral as can be and the sharpness to be as crisp as possible so that they can work with it later and they can soften it if they need to, but I have to deliver a product that's absolutely crisp. And the E-mount system has given me that ability to switch back and forth, to use lenses from all over the place. And particularly the Sony lenses have been helpful to me because I can go back and retrieve the data that I've been working with. And you think it's not important, but I found it to be extremely important to say, I need to reproduce this shot. What was I using? What did I do? And especially now that we are redoing everything in 4K, we had shot maybe 10,000, 11,000 clips in HD that were online with Getty, and now we're redoing everything in 4K because that's what people are buying. And you got to supply the market. So I need the crispest, brightest lenses I can find, the best contrast. Contrast is what's going to give you the sharpness and pretty much give you a product, give you a lens that's going to make us money. And that's the bottom line here. We're not buying this stuff to have a hobby, We've gotten past that. We're buying stuff that will make us money. And that's what we do. Anybody have any questions about EMAT lenses? For this was the FS7 and the FS7 II. The FS7 right here. And the lenses ranged anywhere from the 16, 16 all the way up. I used a 400, and then being that this is HD, I was able to take a 4K image of like the moon coming up behind the Empire State Building, use the HD, the portion of it, and it made it even that much larger. No, it's an E mount, but you can put a PL mount adapter on it. Gosh, you can use so many different adapters. I mean, Metabones has adapters, Photox has adapters. One of the things that is great also about the E-mount system is that you can use Metabones speed boosters. So, and what that does, normally if you take a 50mm lens and put it on a smaller sensor than the one that goes in your 35mm camera, you're going to get a cropped image. And the crop is usually around 1.4, 1.5. So your 50mm lens is going to look like a 75mm lens. Now that doesn't affect you because you could say, well, I could just use a 35mm lens and it'll look like a 50, and so forth, until you get down to the really wide angle lenses, and then you can't do that anymore. Because once you get to a 14, which is going to show up like a 21, that's as wide as you can get. With a speed booster, it allows you to go to the full size of the image. You'll get a 24 will be a 24. And it gives you an additional stop. So your 2.8 lens actually becomes an f2 lens. A pretty incredible deal. So we use PL lens. I have a set of old Cook lenses, S mount for old Arri, that I sent into Duclos, and they rebuilt the lenses for me, and they're just stunning. So they gave me a PL to standard adapter, fits beautifully on the E mount. And you're getting this quality. You can dial in this quality, and you're getting great color. It's just good. It's good. So thank you. Thanks for listening. They're starting their thing, so I gotta shush.